Hello,
Okay.
welcome.
Welcome. It is July, and we are ready to start our Floral Felicity quilt along.
We're so excited. We're excited to dive in and start sewing this
cutting
long-awaited quilt.
Yes. I'm Helen with So Kind of Wonderful,
And I'm Jenny.
and we are sisters, and curves has been our thing for a long time.
Yep.
So we're excited to share that with you today and walk you through our very first sewing of Floral Felicity.
Yep. If you missed the videos we have put up before this one, we went over a welcome video, sort of the supplies you need, cutting your very first 4 zones. And so if you missed all that, you might want to go back, watch those, then come back here and watch us cut and sew our first block together.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's talk about what today's sewing is.
Okay.
We need to just angle that camera just a bit. Let me go angle that.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Should we read it?
No, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, so here's our book. So everyone, if you're watching this, I hope you have this out in front of you.
Yes.
And the Wonder Curve ruler. And so square 4. And then your zone 1.
Mhm.
And we are going to talk about something on the Wonder Curve ruler.
So if your Wonder Curve ruler looks like this, we know something about you. What do we know, Jenny?
We know that you have not started using the ruler yet.
Which is okay. That's why we're showing you.
That's right.
So when you open it, there is a paper included. This paper has a pattern on it. It's this little butterfly runner. So this is a really great introduction to using the Wonder Curve ruler. What we show you today is also going to help you use the Wonder Curve ruler.
So on the Wonder Curve ruler, there is some brown paper on the back, and that needs to come off. So a lot of times we get emails going, how do I take that brown paper off? So if you just take a straight pin and you just loosen the corner of it, it's kind of where we start.
Do you need a sharper pen?
And there we go. So once you get it loosened, you can use your nails, but if you have pretty nails or you're, then you just slowly take that paper off the back. And if you go slow, sometimes you'll get it off in one piece, and sometimes you won't.
And then the first couple times, it might be a little staticky. Just rub it on the back. You can put a little water on it. But there's our shiny new Wonder Curve ruler. Okay.
Yes, we can talk about, if you have some non-skid grip material, you can put on the back of your ruler to help it from sliding. But we found that just having these lines on the ruler, on this Wonder Curve ruler, does help with grip as well.
It does. Okay, so this is our first month in the quilt along, and we are sewing up this quilt by zone. So that means this month we're working on the coneflower, iris, and this strip right here, which is the stepping stones. You can also find it in your pattern.
Under zones, page 8. And it really outlines exactly, zone 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so if you look at the page, this is zone 1, and you read the beginning, it actually says, make the following blocks. Make an iris block, a coneflower block, and stepping stones block. And so it tells you what page number those are on. So now we go to those pages. So we need to have our blocks made before we can put them together into zone 1. So we are going to, it says to make the iris block first. I think that's a great choice.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. So let's go to page 28. 28.
Okay.
Iris block. So now we're getting in our stash of fabrics that we have pre-cut, and we're going to take out everything that has to do with the iris block.
And so that will be zone 1, and it will say iris.
Because
Iris.
you labeled all your cutting.
So there's another one.
There. Not this one. That one.
There's that one. And it will be
That's your setting. That one. Okay. So all of those go back in the bag. So what's really great about having the fabric pre-cut is that now it is actually cut to the size we need, and now we can just start sewing.
Yep.
So if you have not
Fantastic.
pre-cut yet, we really suggest go back and do the cutting set number 1.
Yep.
If you haven't, and you're not going to, you can cut them according to the sizes here in the pink box on the page.
Okay, so working through the pattern, and this is kind of like if you have never used the Wonder Curve ruler, this will be your first introduction to using the Wonder Curve ruler and making your first block. So kind of exciting. And we are using the blue lines for this one
How do we know we're using blue lines?
because in the instructions, everything is in blue right there. So right away, I know I'm using the blue lines. And it also says, oh, that's in tiny little letters.
She has old eyes.
Use blue lines on WCR.
Okay. All right. So so this is our very first block. So we're trying to be very detailed with you. So right here, it says refer to pages 6 and 7 to cut these shapes. So you're wondering, well, how am I going to cut all those curves? So if you look at pages 6 and 7, we're going to flip back and forth between 6 and 7. All right, we have gone ahead and changed camera angle so that you can see this as if you are cutting. And we are still going to cut the iris. So here's our first step. We're looking right here. And we have our pieces. So the first thing we're looking at is the antler F. And we're going to use 4 5x5s. Now how do we cut antler F? You're going to go back to page 6 and 7. You're going to find antler F right here. Blue lettering. And it talks about position right side up or down according to the pattern, and align the corner on the dashed blue V, and then cut in your curve cutout. Okay, so let's look at, so because this is directional fabric and we want all these ladies to be going the right direction, what we're going to do is, so we made them all right side up. So this one is going to flip over. So flip over your top 2. This one comes over onto your left one. And then down here, the same thing. Put your right one onto your left. And then we're going to rotate it 180 degrees. So now all the faces are actually going down. That's just for the cutting. It will be okay. So here. So we're going to cut this one, and then we're going to cut this one. So let's do this one first. We are using our Wonder Curve ruler, and there is a dashed blue box right here. You're going to line that up here and use a regular rotary cutter and cut in your curve slot. All right, so those were right sides together, cut in the curve slot. We're just going to set those aside for now, right here. Then we're going to bring over our other one. Remember, these two are, the heads are down. Put them right sides together with the heads down. And we're going to do the same cut. We're going to cut F again. We're using the blue dashed lines. Blue dashed right here. It's lined up right here in this V.
And when they cut, do they cut on the inside of the curve or the outside?
It does not matter. If you're hitting your ruler as you go around, then angle your wrist a little more. If your blade isn't cutting clear through your fabric, angle your blade up a little bit so you get more of it to go through the slot. I like to anchor it with this hand, with some of, with my pinkies over here on the edge so it doesn't slip. You can cut anywhere in that opening because we will sew and square up our block. If you like to be consistent, then keep it on this convex curve, which is kind of the hump here. Okay, so we went ahead and cut. All right, let's go back. And this tells us what to keep. So after we cut, we're going to lay it out. It says to keep 2, and it shows you, like, let's see. So it says, if they look like this, they were cut right side up. And we're going to keep both of those here. And we're only going to keep, we're only keeping one set of these. And how will we know which one to keep? We're just going to lay this out really quick and make sure that we have cut it. Okay, so if you want to see how the ladies will go, they're going to go like this. So that, because we're going to put another piece here. So here you can see they're all facing up. And then we want to keep, is it that one? We're going to keep the ladies that are facing up, that one, and this one.
Yep.
Okay, so lay it out, make sure that you're keeping the right ones, and all our heads are pointing the right direction. So these are the 2 that you discard. They're just gonna go in that extras bag of extra fabric in case you need it for later. All right, now let's stack these because we are done cutting these for now. And this is what your pattern shows right here. Okay. That was a really hard one to start with. We apologize. We didn't realize that right in that moment. We're like, oh, it's so directional. So pause it, go back, set your fabric up, cut it that way. All right, next one is twist C. Well, how do you cut twist C? You need 4 2 3/4 by 4.5. Go back to page 6 and 7, find twist C right here. And it says we're using the dashed blue line again. So on your paper, this says twist C, and it actually has a C right by those shapes. And do we cut right side up or right side down? Just flip back. You're not in a hurry here, just, double check. It says cut 2 right side up and cut 2 right side down. So I can set them up this way. Let's just go ahead and cut them separate since we're getting used to using the Wonder Curve ruler. So we're going to cut these right side up. We're using the same dashed V. So right here is where your corner goes. I'm going to cut in that slot again. Discard that little piece. You're left with that shape. These, we do the same thing, but they are cut facing down. So line it up in the dashed blue V and cut. Okay, and now you can see, does it look like the picture?
Yes.
Now we have these 2 and it shows it right there. Now we are working with our leaves fabric. So over here, now we go find our leaves. So these are our leaves. And our directions say we're making twist C again. We're cutting 2 right side up and 2 right side down. So we are doing the exact same thing we just did. You can go back and look at pages 6 and 7, or we can process this again. We will set these up with 2 right side up, 2 right side down. I could actually cut all of these at the same time. Should we do that? Okay, so we have 2 up, 2 down. We're using the dashed blue V right there. Nice and firm. And you don't need to go really fast. When you don't need to come all the way down, just cut through the fabric and then stop. Okay. And now we have, there's our pieces. Excellent. All right, now we're just working down the list, and now we're working with Shimmer Bee. And Shimmer Bee, how do we cut Shimmer Bee? Well, we're going to use 2 5 3/4 squares, and we're going to get 4 bee pieces.
Can you explain why it's called shimmer?
Yes, that's a
Okay.
great question. Does anybody know? Looking for hands here. Jenny, do you know?
Well, I know it might be confusing for people, but we have named our shapes over the years, and we consistently name these shapes the same in all of our patterns. So the more you do our patterns, the more familiar you become with these names that we have labeled on these shapes.
And the very first quilt that used the shimmer shape was called Deco Shimmer.
That's right.
So when Jenny and I talk on the phone about it, we're like, let's use the shape from the shimmer quilt. So over the years, it just became the shimmer shape.
Yep. And that's the one we're going to cut right now.
All right, for this one, it does not matter if it's right side up or right side down. So that's a bonus. You look right here at Shimmer Bee, and you cut in half diagonally. So we're going to cut this in half. I actually have 2 of them. I'm just going to keep them together. Cut it in half. And now our next step is to trim off some points. I just like to flip that over. You're going to get really good at this. You're going to make a lot of Shimmer Bees. So I just flip those triangles on top of each other. And now it says align the 5-inch marks on that 90-degree corner, and then cut off the points. You're not cutting in the curve, you're cutting on the edge of the ruler. Now rotate it and make it look like the pattern. Oh, I don't think we've said that before. You know, make your fabric and ruler look like the pattern, the picture in the pattern. Now I rotated it because that's what the pattern shows. And now I look at the solid blue V. I'm looking up here at these box corners, and it just sits right in those 2 corners. And then I hold it firmly and cut in my curved slot. This is discard. And now we have our Shimmer Bees cut. All right, what are we cutting next? All right, we should have 4 of those, and we do. Okay, so now we are cutting 8 3.5 by 5. So, and we are making a twist C and D. Now up here we made twist C, so now we're doing C and D. So come back here, look at twist D or twist D and C. Position right side up or down according to pattern, and align corner on dashed blue V. So we're back to the dashed blue, and we are doing, was it 8? Okay, if you leave these how they come off the bolt, they should be right side up, right side down, right side up, right side down. And if I look at the pattern, 4 should be right side up, 4 should be right side down. So we're going to just keep it simple and stack these in groups of 4. Let's do 2 sets here. I kept them right side up, right side down, right side up, right side down. Remember how we're using the dashed blue line. So now we're right here in the dashed blue. Hold it firmly and cut in your slot. Okay. If your fabric, you know, if you're not cutting clear through on that first cut, maybe look at changing your rotary blade. And then it does take some muscle, shoulder strength. So, you know, push a little harder with your rotary cutter. Okay, again, dashed blue. All right, let's see what we are keeping. So we're not keeping everything. We keep, so it says we have 4D, 4D, and then we have 1C and 1C. So I know we have this right here. And these are actually let's get them in the right pile. So we'll actually sort these really quick so that we have the right sets in the right pile and make it look like the pattern. So if you ever wonder if you cut it right, make it look like the pattern. Okay, so here you can see we have those set up. Okay. All right. Ready for...
Okay, so this is Jenny giving Helen a little break with her scratchy voice. But we are now on this section right here, and this is laying out all of our blocks before we sew them together. So I am just going to follow this fun little graphic, and it's really important to notice how many of each piece, because sometimes it will say 1, sometimes it will say 2, sometimes it will say 4, so it just depends. So I'm looking at this, we're missing, oh, here we go, these, okay. All right, so we're gonna start right here. And I'm just going to just lay it out exactly the way it's laid out in the book. So we're going to start with our E. This is our E petal. It's right there. And then we're going to take our C.
let's switch that E for the other one where the ladies' heads are going. Yeah,
okay.
That one.
Okay, noted. So ladies' heads up. And then we're going to do this one.
Mm-hmm.
So ladies' heads are facing to the right. So if you're watching this and you want to make sure your ladies' heads are...
If that's a thing for you. If it's not...
Do exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Okay. And then we're going to... And then we need our background C. And
we kept way too many of those C's over there. Remember how we only needed 2?
oh, that's right. We only needed 1.
We only need one way and one the other.
One the other way. Okay.
So if you end up with lots of fabric, sometimes it's because you forgot to put them in the extras.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of squished in here. So we'll go ahead and do that. Lay out another background C, and then we need our D background. So I'm just following the graphic, laying them all out. And then we have this one.
So a fun fact about this purple lady fabric is this is a cameo brooch that was our grandma's.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took a picture of it and converted it to a graphic, and so it has meaning to us, but it's a really fun cameo.
Mm-hmm. It's very fun. These B pieces, just set them aside. We will use those in a little bit, but they're not part of this first layout. And then here it says 2D and 2D. So we're gonna stack 2 of those on top of each other, and 2, and then 2, and then 2. So now we have all of our pieces laid out just like it shows you here, and we are ready to sew our curves. Okay, so we are now on step 4, and we are going to sew, our first 2 curves, and I'm going to pass the pieces over to Helen, and she's going to explain how to sew those together.
Okay, for sewing, we always sew with, here's your seam that we're going to sew. Concave is on the bottom. Convex will flip over. And for this one, the pattern shows you, you leave a little 1/4 inch tail. Just follow the pattern. If it says match your ends, match, or leave a tail, all it does is center this piece on this one. And for sewing, we will just start with a couple stitches. So just sew a couple stitches, and then I'm going to actually hold one piece in each hand, and then as it feeds, I'll bring the curved edges together. And I like to hold the top one with my left hand, and the bottom one, I don't really grab it and do this because that will distort it. As it feeds, I just kind of tap it over so it's in the right spot. Jenny actually holds them opposite. So we'll show you both sewings. You can shorten your stitch length, but we find just your regular 2 1/4 is great. And when you get down here, just position that end piece, and then I just hold it and sew off. And then you can see how that finishes nicely. All right, now I will sew the next one. Okay, now we are sewing the opposite. This is a mirrored image. So now we're sewing from the other end. So here, remember, the concave stays on the bottom. So flip this over, and here the pattern shows a 1/2 inch tail. And you're just eyeballing that. You know what a 1/2 inch looks like. So set that up, sew a couple stitches, and then again, hold one piece in each hand, and as it feeds, bring them together. And I'm trying not to pull. And then here, I feel like it needs to relax a little. And there's our finished piece. And notice now we finished with a 1/4 inch on this end, which is what we started with on the other one. So if you're getting a really long tail, it means you're pulling as you're sewing. So try not to do that. Sew the next one, and you're going to get better.
All right, so I'm going to show you, this is Jenny, my method of sewing curves, which is just my hand placement, is different than Helen's. So again, I'm going to flip that over. This is convex, concave, start a 1/4 inch down. And as I sew, I hold the top one with my right hand, and the bottom one, I'm sort of, bringing over as I sew. And the top one, I sort of just kind of keep straight, and the bottom one is the one you are maneuvering. And then again, we'll flip this over. This time it starts down about a 1/2 inch, convex, concave. And this is where you have all your pieces laid out. You can chain piece all of your curves. And then I sort of pinch the two together as I come off the edge.
Okay, do you want me to hand you another one?
Yep, I'll just keep sewing. So these pieces, we are going to start.
I think these
1/4
are
inch down.
1/4 inch, yep, on each side. And where are we getting that? It's in the pattern, and we will show you.
And as you see, I'm sewing a little bit faster, and you will find that after you have sewed this iris block, you will find yourself sewing faster and more consistent. It just takes practice sewing these curves.
And I like how Jenny just pinches this, she just holds it as it feeds through there in the end.
So these are our little leaves. We had, remember 2 and 2. So go ahead and sew and chain piece.
We are really walking you through this first block slowly. You're going to get really good at this, and we're not going to hold your hand and show you all this sewing as we go through the
We'll just
You're going
be
to
here
get
forever.
really good at this. But we think it's important that you see the process and how quickly you can work through these curves.
I do switch my hands about 2/3 of the way down. And then we have 2 more. again, starting a 1/4 inch down. And if you feel like, oh, you know, it's not working, what we haven't told you yet is all of your blocks get squared up. So if you feel like you still just, you know, your towel's too long or ended up not being a 1/4 inch at the end, we will be squaring all of these blocks up. So there is some wiggle room to not be a perfect sewer.
It's actually why we really like this method for sewing curves.
All right, so you can see all of our chains cut. All right, we are ready to press our blocks, and we are working on we're working on 4, and if you can see here, we tell you which way to press your seam. So this is actually really important, and we always make note of it in the pattern, and we have figured it all out for you. So just follow the pattern. Press the seam the way it shows you.
So here you're pressing to C, which is the smaller piece.
And sometimes, most of the time, it's easier to just press from the back. So you can see we press towards our C piece. So for this particular CE block, we are going to press all the same. And we like to use a little bit of steam, helps that seam lay nice and flat. So we have the four of those blocks.
Okay, are you going to press the others right now?
Uh-huh.
Yep. Okay.
So we'll go ahead and keep pressing, and these also get pressed towards the C. And sometimes I like to press from the top, and I'll just kind of lay that seam down with my finger. So whatever you like and feel comfortable with, you know, you will find your method that you like. I do both. What do you do, Helen? Do you go back and
I
forth?
usually start on the back.
And then flip it over
And then flip it
give it a
over.
good press.
I feel like I'm not a great presser. What do you do to be a good presser? Do you push as you're pressing?
Mm-hmm. Do you, or do you stretch?
Oh, I'm always stretching things. So I have to really like tell myself,
Oh,
don't.
like hold it, you know,
Okay.
give it a good, just a little.
I'm kind of that stretchy sewer, like pull too hard, push too hard.
What you will, so when you are pressing, sometimes if you press from the back, I do like to give this a little bit of a pull, because sometimes you will get a pleat on the side. So, you know,
That little tug.
yeah, so.
Okay. And we're not snipping those curves. The curve will lay down nicely. You do not need to snip it. It's a gentle curve.
Yep. So we are all pressed, and there is a step for these 4 blocks, and it's step number 6. So we'll go ahead and show you that step here. Okay, so on the Wonder Curve ruler, so we're on step number 6, and we're going to lay this block out just like it shows you right in the pattern. So right here, and we're going to place the Wonder Curve ruler on top of our block, and on the seam, so this seam right here, we're going to line up the blue dot. So on the Wonder Curve ruler, there is a blue dot, and that will line up on my seam.
Yeah, maybe I can zoom in and show them. Put it up here a little bit. And then let's get it to focus. And I don't know, can they see?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so blue dot on seam, and then where this seam is up here, my curve cutout sits right over this point right there. So blue dot here, curve cutout over that point.
And the pattern does have all those little arrows telling you all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so once I have those 2 areas lined up, then I am ready to cut in my curve cutout. And now you can see, oh, that's how you get that shape. This is discard.
Now, right here, I always just snip off that little itty bitty tail
Yep.
sticking out.
So you can just trim that off.
I thought about putting that in the pattern like 20 times and kept forgetting. So,
That's why you're watching this video.
yes, this is your bonus information.
Okay, so now we are going to do the other side. So next image. And again, now we have a blue dot on the other side. So that will line up on the seam. And then the curve cutout is over this point.
Let's scoot it up a minute. There we go.
Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. And then we'll go ahead and cut in our curve cutout. Discard. And trim off that little piece there. And we will go ahead and cut these two as well. So, and I could have done them at the same time, but that's okay, because we have the directions right in front of us, so we know what we need to do. Again, that blue dot on that seam and the curve cutout over your point. And then the other direction. Blue dot on this side, curve cutout over point. Okay, so let's go ahead and lay these out the way it shows you here. So we have these two, and then we have these two. And let's see here. Okay. All right. So now we are ready to sew on. So this is where this B piece comes back into our little block here. So we're going to sew.
So it shows you right here in step 7. So set them up so it looks just like this.
Oh, yep, let's do that. Thank you, Miss Helen.
Teacher Helen showed up.
There we go.
You know.
When in doubt, just follow the pattern. Right. And go. Yep. All right. Okay, so now we can lay these out. So we are ready to sew these B pieces onto our CFs.
All right, let's talk through setting this up. So remember, we keep concave on the bottom. So concave on the bottom, convex on top. We're going to flip this over, and this has about a 1/4 inch tail. Still sewing a 1/4 inch seam, couple stitches, hold one piece in each hand. The main thing is don't pull that bottom piece. And it will look like that. Then we're going to go ahead and sew the other 3. And now we're sewn.
All right, we are ready to press, and this time, looking at the pattern, we are pressing towards our B piece. So we're pressing towards the background, and we're going to press from the back first, and that's the way the seam wants to go. So let it go that way. Do that for all 4 of those blocks. So this block is called our antler block.
This is our antler point.
Antler point.
And a long time ago, we have a pattern called Urbanology that has antlers in it. And this was how we made the point. And we're like, that's such a cool block. So now we keep using it and tweaking it.
Yep. So there's that.
Okay.
Okay, so we are now on squaring up our blocks. So at this stage you have sewed and pressed all of your blocks and it's time to square up. So we are going to start with this block right here, and we are on number 8 on the iris block, and we have really good graphics and pictures in the book on how to square up. So we are going to square up with the Wonder Curve ruler, and then I will show you how to square up with the Sew Square 4-inch ruler. So because we are using the blue lines for this block, we are using the blue dots on the ruler to square up this block. So I'm going to place the block just like it shows you in the book. So I'm going to place it in the same direction, and I'm using this really handy rotating, actually let's take that away. We'll use that with the Sew Square 4. So we're going to place the Wonder Curve ruler on top of my block, and this seam right here, and it tells you in the book, sits at my 2-inch line on my Wonder Curve ruler. So 2 inches in, and then the blue dot will sit on the seam here and the point here. So you see the point, we have that seam, and we have that seam.
Maybe if we show them with this one, they'll see that point.
It's not so good idea.
Yeah.
So you can see that blue dot sitting on that point. And then the 2-inch line here on this seam, and the blue dot on this seam. And this is a really good example of a block that sort of got shifted as it got sewed. The seam doesn't sit exactly on the blue dot, but it's close enough. And we are squaring this block to a 4x4.
And I always think of the 3 points that this one is the least important, and probably this too
Is more important.
is more important than this side.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so blue dot, and then the 2-inch here on that seam. So we are ready to square up our block to a 4-inch by 4-inch. So I'm going to trim off the 2 sides, rotate my block, and now we line up those trimmed edges on my 4-inch lines on my ruler. Trim and trim. So you can see we now have this perfectly squared up block. So let's do the same using the Sew Square 4-inch ruler. Same block, it's just this colorway. So placing the 4-inch ruler, and this is where I'm going to use my rotating cutting mat, and you'll see why. So on the ruler we have, instead of blue dots, we have a black dots. So again, you're going to line up the center seam on my 2-inch, and then the seam here sits on my black dot, and the point sits on my black dot. 2-inch, and then black dot, and you can see I can trim all the way around that Sew Square 4. So I'm going to trim 2 sides, and without lifting anything up, we're just going to rotate my cutting mat and then trim the other 2 sides. So that's what's really great with this little Sew Square 4 is if you have a 4-inch block, you can just trim everything without picking anything up and rotating it. All right, so now let's go ahead and trim these real quick. I'll use this Sew Square 4, just this is the other direction. So let's do this one first. So we're on the second image here on number 8, and now the 2-inch line going down the Sew Square 4 will sit on my seam on this side. So before it was up here, and now it's over on this side. The black dot sits on my point here, and the black dot sits on my seam right here. So once I'm all lined up, I can go ahead and trim all the way around. rotate, but you can see how slick that is to have the Sew Square 4 and the rotating cutting mat. All right, and then we'll do this one. Again, 2-inch, there we go, 2-inch, and anytime you're working with all of our rulers to do any square up, we always have the ones in the top right-hand corner. So we have our 2-inch line sitting on our seam here, black dot on the seam here, and the black dot on that point. And then just rotate that around, trim the other 2 sides. And there's our first 4 blocks, sewed, pressed, and trimmed up. So let's go ahead and square up the other blocks. So turning the page, we are on number 9, and we are squaring these blocks up. And this time we'll go ahead and use the Wonder Curve ruler because these get trimmed up to a 2 1/4 by 4-inch block. So I'm going to go ahead and just make 2 piles here because we have 2 different blocks. So if I'm looking at my picture, we are going to make 2 piles. You know, the block's facing that way, so I've got that one, and the block's facing that way. And so when I go to trim all of my blocks, I'm doing this whole pile the same, and then this whole pile the same. Okay, all right. So let's start with this one. So we're going to place our block underneath the Wonder Curve ruler, and the seam will sit on the 2-inch vertical line. So again, 2 inches over. And the blue dot will sit on my curved seam right here. So 2 inches curved seam, the blue dot sits on that, and then this gets squared up to a 2 1/4 by 4. So we're going to trim 2 sides, lift your ruler, rotate your block, not your ruler, and then line up your trimmed up edges on your 2 1/4 and 4-inch, and then trim the other 2 sides. So you will do that for all of your blocks that are facing that same direction. Again, I lined up the, oh, I messed up. Oh, shoot. This is going to happen to you. So I lined up that seam on my 1 3/4. So I need to line it up on the 2-inch. And
So we're going to get out the scrap bag and cut new fabric.
that's right.
This is going to happen. Yes.
Okay, so that, that happens. We're going to set that aside.
Oh, remember how we had these extra purple pieces? Oh,
do.
yes, but are the ladies going the right direction? Okay, so if it bugs you, find new scrap, or this is the right shape.
It is.
But let me go see what we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's do this right. Okay, 2-inch. And this is where, like, if you don't want to make a mistake, maybe you put like some glow line tape on your 2-inch line, or you make a little mark with like a Sharpie. So you know, okay, that 2-inch line needs to sit on my seam every time when I square up these blocks, because even we make mistakes, and we've been doing this for a long, long time. Again, that blue dot's on my seam there. Rotate my block, line it up on the 4-inch and 2 1/4. And we have one more. 2-inch on my seam, blue dot on my curved seam down there. And we do have extra. So let's sort of talk through how we're going to cut that.
Okay, so here's a couple thoughts. So this is our miscut. And so we know we need this shape again, but we want the ladies to go the other direction. So there's a couple things you can do. You can totally go back and just start over with cutting, or you can use this as a template and just lay it on.
And it's facing the
And yeah,
okay.
and the people are turned, the other way. So then you can just cut that You can either use the Wonder Curve or you can just use your rotary cutter.
Okay, let's use that as a template. So I'm going to just trim off that edge, and then I am going to rotate this. It'll be easier to cut. And then I'm going to line up my curve cutout just right on that piece that's already cut out.
Or go back to the blue. Remember how we're using?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
or we can just
Blue
line it up
dash.
on the blue lines. Perfect. Okay, so
Okay.
this is the good one. Perfect. There we go.
Okay.
Now the
And
background.
then the background, here's a piece, and we need a D. So
Okay.
a D is 3.5 by 5.
So let's go ahead and cut that. And then line up on the blue lines.
And oh wait, is
Blue
it
dotted.
right side up or yes? So this is right side up because remember,
Mhm.
sometimes they're right side down. But we would have known that.
Thank goodness for that extra fabric.
Okay, I will sew this.
Okay. And while she's sewing, I will go ahead and square up the other blocks. So let's go ahead and go to the squaring up these blocks. And it's laid horizontal like this for a reason, because that's how you are going to...
Sorry, I'm
No, you're good. Wouldn't it be fantastic to have like that second person in your quilting room every time you go to quilt? Oh, I messed up. Here, go sew this again. So we're gonna lay this block horizontal underneath the Wonder Curve ruler. And this time, the seam will sit 2 inches down on this 2-inch horizontal line. And then the blue dot sits on my curved seam there. And I'm going to trim this up to a 2 1/4 by 4. So we'll trim the 2 sides. Lift up your ruler, rotate your block, and then line that up underneath the 4-inch and the 2 1/4. Here. And these, again, this is all in your book. So you can look at it there or just watch this video over if you, or I'm going to square up all of these so you can see it 3 more times. Again, 2-inch on my seam, blue dot on my curved seam there. Rotate, line up that squared up edge, the 4-inch, and then the 2 1/4. And then trim the other 2 sides. Inch. So this is why if you have 2 different piles, you're squaring up all 4 at the same time and then squaring up these 4, it's consistent. And then the last one, not the last one, I have to square up my oopsie block. And then back to this one, 2-inch here, blue dot on the seam there.
So maybe we should talk about the blue dot. The blue dot is where your seam allowances are going to intersect on your next step when you sew things together. So that's where that curved seam, you know, it'll end up in those, right in those 90-degree places.
Exactly. So a 1/4-inch seam, 1/4-inch seam, you get that nice point. Yeah. Okay, we are all squared up. And this is all scrap. And we are ready to lay out our iris block. So looking at number 10, we're going to sew this sort of in sections. So let's sew the iris flower top first. So let's take all of our pieces here.
So there are a couple options as you're assembling this quilt. You can follow the pattern exactly how we show, but you also have the option to tweak the blocks a teeny bit. And we will show you that, because as long as you're sewing the same pieces back together, you know, and get the same size, you get to make some creative choices. And this is one of those examples where right here, you can actually switch these and give yourself more of an open bloom.
That's cute.
You can also be like really funky and, you know, totally switch up colors here.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
Here. So we wanted to show you that there's ways for you to make this quilt uniquely yours. We think the way it's written is beautiful. We love it if you just follow the pattern, but know that you do have options here.
Yep, I like that. So that being said, we will just sew it the way the pattern shows.
That's right. But, you know, we know some of you are like, oh, that's a great idea.
Okay. So we will go ahead and sew this, and basically, the way my brain works is I will sew in horizontal rows.
Yep. Sew together.
But you could sew these two and sew those, you know, so however you are used to sewing your blocks together.
Okay, and it does say we're pressing seams open.
Yes, yes. So we will go ahead and sew and just continue. Okay, so we went ahead and sewed our blocks together. I wanted to show you the back of it and how we have pressed our seams open. And pressed our seams open. Okay, so there's our iris top. It looks so beautiful, but look at the heads. The cameo heads are all facing the right direction. So that's exciting as a quilter, but we figured that all out.
Okay, so right here, that doesn't line up perfectly, but it's gonna hide in the seam allowance, so don't worry about that.
And that's common. If that happens, just know that, you know, that will happen.
But this is, like, this one lines up perfectly there. That one I could have pinned it, but it's fine.
Looks good.
We're still good with it.
Right. Okay, so now going on to step number 11. We need to do a little trimming off of these two blocks before we sew them together or sew them onto our next piece. So looking at the pattern,
It's not focused.
it shows we have to trim off a 1/2 inch on these two sides of the block. So 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch there. And if you're wondering why, it is what it is. We've already figured it out for you, so you just follow the directions.
Why is it? Let me think about that. Because we wanted these petals to have a little more.
I'm gonna flip that and trim this side.
We didn't want it to be a point where it met anyway, and it matched up with this inserting a stem.
Yes.
I think we're making room for the stem.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we trimmed off those two inside parts. Okay, so now moving on to step 12, we are actually ready to lay out the whole bottom part of our iris. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna lay out those there and then take our other pieces, which are where?
They may have got put back in the
Let's
scrap bag.
see.
So,
It was the 2, 3, and a 4 by 4. Yep.
is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so. And then we have our stem, which is right here. This is always my favorite part because it's like, oh, you finally get to see it come together. And then we have.
Okay, so we're missing 2 green right here.
Oh, perfect. Okay. I think we can go up, yeah. So we'll go here, and then we have our. Isn't it nice? We already have all of these cut out. I love that.
I know, that's
Fantastic.
Pre-cutting.
All right, so we are ready to sew. So looking at this, obviously this row will need to be sewed. So I mean, in the pattern, we kind of have it laid out as far as sections, but at this stage, you just look at your block and you know, okay, I need to sew these together first, and then sew them onto my backgrounds, and then sew these, and then sew into the stem. So let's go ahead and we'll sew these on.
Right here is the iris flower all sewn together. So everything lined up nicely. If you look at the back, we'll show you, we press seams open. The instructions do say to press your stem seam towards the stem. Everything else is pressed open. And why do we press open? Typically we always press our curved seam to the side, and then oftentimes we'll press our straight seams open, and that will reduce how many layers of fabric are in those intersections. This background fabric does have some direction to it, but it's a very neutral background fabric. So here it's going this way, here, it changes. We actually like this. We think it adds to the overall play of the quilt, and it's not something to stress about. This is just normal sewing with a neutral background fabric. So it's very lovely, and you have just finished your iris block for Zone 1.